Hello, today we are on Jesse's Book Corner and we're going to talk about the things they carried. We're going to discuss page 80 through page 80, page 2. How do you generalize? War is hell. Well, that's not the half of it, because war is also mystery, and terror, and adventure, and courage, and discovery, and holiness, and pity, and despair, and longing, and love. War is nasty, war is fun, war is thrilling, war is drudgery, war makes you a man, war makes you dead. So, that is the passage from Tim O'Brien's book, The Things They Carry, and it is also from the chapter How to Tell a True War Story. Now I want to talk about this because of one of my favorite quotes of all time by John Green, who says, "The truth resists simplicity. The truth resists simplicity. The truth resists simplicity." And I really like that quote because it's absolutely true, and it's the best thing about it is that it is so simple and true, but it contradicts itself because it's a paradox. And it's like, the truth resists simplicity, but if you're true and you resist simplicity, then how can it be that simple and true? It's very, very good quote. So, Tim O'Brien also says that here in his book. He says how to journalize in war, because war is everything. And in all of his book, I think, talks about how war is all the different angles. For example, how Mr. Spare, who was probably watching this at this time, told us before that there was one time when there was complete nothing from the outside, and how... Anyways, the chapter that I thought exemplified how the people outside of war were completely not conscious of what was actually happening in the war was the chapter that we just read, or just finished up reading, which was Speaking of Courage, where Norman, I don't know his last name, just Norman, he was going around in his Chevy, and, he's driving, and he's looking at all these people, and he thinks about how this is a nice town, this is a town that he'd like to live in, a town that he was before, a town where he would have liked to have married that one girl who is now married to someone else, and he thinks about it, and it's like, but the town completely would not understand his war story. He talked about how the dead guy, Max, would have understood it, but he feels so alone, and it's very sad because no one understands the war. But from the completely other side, as in seen in the Sweetheart of the Song Trebong, where the crazy girl, whose name will be Crazy Girl from now on, whose name is actually Crazy Girl, into the book. That's why I keep looking down. Look down, equal book. Anyways, Mary Ann came and he completely understood the war to the point where the war made her crazy. She went out and she shot people up and she was like, "I love the war because it makes me feel alive." And everyone was like, "That's good." Complete misunderstanding from the people at home, and then complete understanding from the people at home. Most authors or filmmakers or, artists say that the people back home can't understand when the soldiers come back and the soldiers are trying to fit back into reality and the normal life, and they just can't do it, and a lot of them end up killing themselves, and it's pretty sad. But yeah, most people generalize that that's what happened, but you can't do that anymore because, as exemplified by Mary Ann, who came back and was like, "Man, I like the war, and I want to do well in the war." And she became the country and understood so much. And you just can't generalize about stuff like that. The truth resists simplicity. Another example of where war resists generalization and the truth resists simplicity, in the example of war, is the chapters Enemies and Friends, where Lee Stunk and Dave Jensen get into a fight, and fight a lot. And Dave punches in Lee's nose so badly that Lee has to leave the field of battle and come back later. And Dave gets very wary of Lee and goes around and he's like, oh crap, Lee's gonna kill me because I totally almost killed him. And it's very sad. But of course, it comes back, and after a while, they become best friends. And they sleep in the same place, and they watch each other's back, and they go on dangerous missions together, and they're like, bump-a-dump-a-dump. And it's pretty good. So, another thing, people get into fights, and you can't really say who's the enemy and who's the friend in what you're doing. It also goes for when our main character, Tim O'Brien, got the grenade out, and he has the pin, and he's like, psh, and he throws it to that one guy who's the smart professor dude of math and stuff, and he knows the professor dude isn't going to do anything. So he's like, oh, this guy is my friend, but yet he is my enemy, because I just blew him up with a grenade, and I can't stop thinking about him, and how he is either good or bad, I can't tell. So I'm going to blur with the story of Lee and Dave, and also the grenade story is the part about how the friends and enemies in war are really not as distinct as everyone thinks they are. I mean, people think I'm on the American side, so they're my friends, and the Vietnamese are my enemies. But as shown in the story, that's not the case. They just don't do it that way. Another good example of how the truth resists simplicity is, of course, the whole thing with Tim O'Brien, and how his book is either completely fiction or completely not fiction, or non-fiction. Yeah, non-fiction. Completely fiction or non-fiction. Anyways, no one really knows, except for Tim himself, whether the stories in the book are real or not. Or maybe some are, some aren't, and you can't really tell. But the thing is, you don't need to tell. As he says in the chapter How to Tell a True War Story, and all throughout the book, really, how the real truth doesn't need to be truth. It's the thinking and the feeling of truth. Like how Rat always made his stories bigger than they were and added in things just so they could convey the feeling of what it really was in the story. And the thing is, the truth, because the truth resists simplicity, you couldn't just say what it really was, or you couldn't just tell it completely lie. You'd have to say it as the truth was. And the truth, because it can't be simple, you can't just tell a story and say, this is what the truth is, and you should draw this conclusion from what it was, and this thing is correct, and this thing is wrong, and this thing is not, because you can't say that. Because the truth resists simplicity. You've got to think about it. It's like, is this really true? It doesn't matter that it's true. What do I get out of this, and how can I think about this better? It's really what you need to say. So, my whole point through these three examples of friends and enemies, Tim O'Brien's writing style, and how people are outside the war, think really critically about the war, really know they're in the war, and they don't know about the war. Those three things all just say that the truth resists simplicity, and especially in war, you cannot say the truth and in a simple way. You must know what it is, and I really like that Tim O'Brien he says this really well in his book and how he does it all, and I think that's why I really like the book, because he says the truth, but it ain't simple, and he says it simply, but sometimes it ain't truth. So I'd really like to implant that idea of the truth resists simplicity in your mind, and I applied it to the book. Hopefully I get a good grade. But yeah, just thinking about that.